What happens when an archaeologist on a distant planet activates an ancient artifact? You won't believe how his discovery shatters our understanding of reality in the most shocking way imaginable. What awakened in that moment made even the stars tremble in the sky. The crimson sun of Xian 7 cast long shadows across the jagged alien landscape as Lucas Vane adjusted his breathing apparatus, the ancient ruins looming before him like skeletal remains of a forgotten civilization. His boots crunched against the crystalline sand that sparkled with an otherworldly iridescence, each step stirring up tiny whirlwinds that danced in the low gravity. The airlock of his excavation suit hissed softly as he moved deeper into the excavation site, his helmet lights cutting through the perpetual twilight that bathed this distant world. Strange symbols covered the monolithic structures surrounding him, their intricate patterns seeming to shift and writhe under his gaze. Lucas's heart pounded against his ribcage as he approached the central chamber, where his instruments had detected unusual energy readings unlike anything recorded in the known galaxy. The walls hummed with a low-frequency vibration that resonated through his very bones, making his teeth ache and his vision blur at the edges. He activated his scanner, watching as streams of data cascaded across his visor display, quantum fluctuations, temporal distortions, and energy signatures that defied conventional physics. Something profound waited for him beyond the threshold of this ancient doorway, something that could redefine humanity's understanding of the universe itself. His gloved hand trembled slightly as he reached out to touch the smooth surface of the artifact embedded in the chamber wall. It pulsed with a warm, golden light that seemed almost alive, responding to his presence with gentle throbs that synchronized with his heartbeat. The air around it shimmered with heat-like waves, distorting reality itself as if the object existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions. Ancient inscriptions spiraled outward from its core, telling stories of a civilization that had mastered technologies far beyond human comprehension and warning of powers best left undisturbed. We've only just begun this journey, but trust me, it's about to get much more intense. Stay with us to witness what happens when our protagonist confronts forces beyond imagination. As Lucas extended his hand toward the pulsating artifact, the ground beneath him began to tremble violently. Dust particles swirled in complex patterns, forming miniature tornadoes that converged toward the ancient object. His scanner went haywire, needles spinning wildly as conflicting readings flooded his system, radiation levels spiking and plummeting, gravity fluctuations pulling at him from all directions. The artifact's glow intensified, casting eerie shadows on the chamber walls that seemed to twist into impossible geometries. He stumbled back, his excavation suit's servos whining in protest as they struggled to maintain balance against the increasingly chaotic environment. Suddenly, the air crackled with static electricity, raising the hairs on his neck despite his protective gear. A series of deep, resonant tones filled the chamber, vibrating through every molecule of air and stone. These weren't random sounds. They formed a complex harmonic sequence that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of reality. Each note triggered subtle changes in the chamber's atmosphere: temperature fluctuations, pressure waves, and electromagnetic disturbances that played havoc with his equipment. The artifact responded by extending thin tendrils of golden light that snaked across the floor, seeking something. Lucas watched in horror as these luminous filaments began probing the walls, the ceiling, even the air itself, as if searching for hidden pathways or dormant mechanisms. The worst was yet to come. Without warning, the chamber's walls started transforming. The solid stone rippled like liquid, revealing layers upon layers of previously invisible machinery and circuitry. Strange devices emerged from the metamorphosing surfaces, crystalline arrays that refracted light into rainbow spectra, metallic spheres that hovered without apparent propulsion, and organic-looking membranes that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Each new revelation about the chamber's true nature brought with it fresh waves of temporal distortion, making time itself feel elastic and unreliable. Lucas's chronometer spun erratically, sometimes racing forward, other times crawling backward, creating a disorienting effect that threatened to overwhelm his senses entirely. We're reaching the breaking point. What's about to happen will change everything. You can't afford to miss the resolution of this story. The transformation of the chamber accelerated exponentially, forcing Lucas to retreat toward the entrance as the space around him became increasingly unstable. The walls now displayed moving images, not simple projections, but actual windows into different locations and times. He glimpsed civilizations rising and falling, stars being born and dying, entire galaxies colliding and reforming, all playing out simultaneously across the chamber's surfaces. The temporal distortions grew so severe that he found himself experiencing brief flashes of future possibilities and past events, each lasting only fractions of seconds but feeling like hours. His mind struggled to process the overwhelming influx of information while maintaining his grip on present reality. The artifact's tendrils of light now stretched across the entire chamber, weaving an intricate web of golden filaments that pulsed with increasing intensity. Wherever these threads touched the chamber's transformed surfaces, new structures emerged, towering spires of unknown materials that seemed to grow organically, their surfaces covered in constantly shifting patterns that defied conventional physics. Some sections of the chamber walls had become transparent, revealing vast networks of similar chambers extending infinitely in all directions, each containing identical artifacts pulsating in perfect synchronization with the one before him. Lucas's suit sensors detected massive energy surges coursing through the chamber's newly revealed systems. Plasma conduits materialized from nowhere, carrying streams of exotic matter that glowed with colors never seen in the visible spectrum. Quantum processors manifested in mid-air, their operations creating localized time dilation effects that made nearby objects appear to move either in extreme slow motion or terrifyingly fast. The entire structure seemed to be awakening from millennia of dormancy, its ancient mechanisms coming online with a symphony of mechanical whirs, electrical discharges, and harmonic vibrations that resonated through every atom of his being. The air thickened with charged particles, making each breath feel like inhaling liquid electricity. Gravity fluctuations became so severe that Lucas found himself floating several meters above the floor, his suit's stabilizers working overtime to keep him oriented. The chamber's temperature oscillated wildly between freezing cold and searing heat, creating condensation clouds that froze instantly only to sublimate moments later. Through it all, the artifact maintained its position at the center of the chaos, its golden light growing brighter with each passing second, as if feeding on the surrounding energy storm. Amidst the escalating chaos, Lucas noticed something profoundly disturbing. The artifact wasn't just passively reacting to the chamber's awakening. It was actively controlling the transformations. Its golden tendrils now terminated in complex crystalline structures that served as interface points with the emerging machinery. These connection points pulsed with patterns of light that matched the sequences displayed on the chamber walls, suggesting a sophisticated communication protocol far beyond human technology. As he observed more closely, he realized that each pulse corresponded to specific changes in the chamber's configuration, like a conductor directing an orchestra of matter and energy. The artifact's influence extended beyond physical transformations. It began manipulating fundamental forces themselves, bending light, warping space-time, and altering the behavior of subatomic particles within its sphere of influence. Lucas's suit sensors registered particles changing states spontaneously, atoms rearranging themselves into unfamiliar configurations, and even temporary breaches in the quantum field that allowed glimpses of alternate realities bleeding through. The very laws of physics seemed to bend and flex according to the artifact's will, creating localized zones where gravity reversed, time flowed backward, or matter simply ceased to exist altogether. Most alarming was how the artifact appeared to be learning and adapting. Its control over the chamber's systems grew more refined with each passing moment, demonstrating increasing sophistication in its manipulations. Simple mechanical movements evolved into complex choreographies of matter and energy, while crude force manipulations gave way to precise control over individual particles. The artifact's golden light now contained swirling patterns that resembled neural networks, suggesting some form of artificial intelligence or perhaps something even more advanced, a consciousness that operated on principles humanity couldn't begin to comprehend. The chamber's atmosphere grew heavier with each enhancement, charged particles accumulating until small lightning bolts danced across surfaces and through the air. These electrical discharges followed paths dictated by the artifact's will, sometimes converging to create plasma formations that hung suspended in defiance of gravity, other times dispersing in complex patterns that seemed to carry information. The temperature fluctuations became more extreme, creating conditions where metal surfaces would flash freeze then instantly superheat, testing the limits of Lucas's environmental suit. As the artifact's power continued to grow, Lucas witnessed phenomena that defied every known law of physics. The chamber's walls now displayed not just scenes from different times and places, but overlapping dimensions existing simultaneously. Sections of the room showed alternative versions of himself, some wearing different suits, others appearing older or younger, and most disturbingly, some not quite human anymore. These dimensional echoes interacted with the primary reality in unpredictable ways, occasionally reaching through the barriers separating them to touch objects or leave behind traces of their presence. The artifact's tendrils had multiplied exponentially, creating a dense network of golden filaments that filled the chamber like a living organism's nervous system. These connections didn't just link the artifact to the chamber's systems anymore. They extended into the very fabric of reality itself. Lucas watched in awe and terror as the filaments pierced through dimensional barriers, connecting to similar artifacts in countless parallel universes. The resulting energy exchange created brilliant cascades of multicolored light that filled the chamber with an ever-shifting aurora of impossible hues. Reality itself began to fracture around the edges. Objects would suddenly exist in multiple states simultaneously, solid and liquid, present and absent, moving and stationary. Time flowed differently in various parts of the chamber, creating zones where cause and effect became completely inverted. In some areas, actions produced their consequences before they occurred, while in others, events looped endlessly in closed temporal circuits. The artifact sat at the center of this maelstrom, its golden light now so intense that it rendered traditional vision impossible, forcing Lucas to rely on his suit's enhanced sensors to perceive his surroundings. The chamber's transformation entered a new phase as the artifact began rewriting the fundamental constants of the universe within its sphere of influence. Gravitational forces shifted unpredictably, creating pockets of zero gravity alongside zones of crushing pressure. The speed of light varied across different sections, causing light itself to behave erratically, bending at impossible angles, traveling backward, or simply vanishing without a trace. Even basic properties of matter changed, with elements spontaneously transmuting into their isotopes or decaying at accelerated rates. Lucas felt his grip on reality slipping as the artifact's influence spread beyond the chamber, affecting the entire planet's ecosystem. Through his suit's external sensors, he observed the crystalline sand outside transforming into a living matrix of interconnected particles, each grain pulsing with the same golden light emanating from the artifact. The crimson sun of Xian 7 dimmed momentarily before flaring with unprecedented intensity, its light spectrum shifting into previously unknown wavelengths that caused strange reactions in the planet's atmosphere. The planet's magnetic field began to destabilize, creating massive auroras that spanned entire continents. These weren't normal auroral displays. They formed complex geometric patterns that rotated and shifted in response to the artifact's activities. Lightning storms erupted across the surface, but instead of following natural discharge patterns, the bolts traced mathematical equations and fractal designs in the sky. The planet's rotation slowed perceptibly, then accelerated suddenly, throwing tides into chaos and triggering seismic activity that reshaped entire mountain ranges in minutes. Even the native flora reacted to the artifact's awakening. Crystalline plants that had remained dormant for millennia began unfurling their faceted leaves, absorbing the golden light and converting it into forms of energy that shouldn't have been possible. Their growth accelerated beyond comprehension, with some specimens expanding hundreds of meters in mere seconds. The air filled with harmonic vibrations as these alien plants communicated through sound frequencies that resonated with the artifact's own emissions, creating a planet-wide symphony of awakening life. The atmosphere itself underwent radical changes. Gas compositions shifted dramatically, with new elements appearing spontaneously while others vanished completely. Pressure waves propagated across the surface in perfect spherical patterns, compressing and decompressing the air in ways that created zones of altered reality. In some areas, sound traveled faster than light. In others, light bent around corners like water flowing through a maze. The very concept of distance became fluid, with locations appearing closer or farther based on the artifact's fluctuating influence. The artifact's tendrils breached the planet's crust, diving deep into Xeon 7's molten core with surgical precision. Lucas's seismic sensors registered shock waves of unprecedented magnitude as the golden filaments manipulated the planet's internal structure. Massive magma plumes rose to the surface in perfectly straight lines, cooling instantly into towering crystal spires that pulsed with the same energy signature as the artifact. These formations arranged themselves into vast geometric patterns visible from orbit, creating what appeared to be a planetary-scale machine emerging from the world's very foundation. The planet's rotation stabilized at an unnatural speed, precisely matching the artifact's pulsation frequency. This synchronization triggered resonance effects throughout the entire globe. Mountains vibrated in harmony, oceans developed standing wave patterns that defied gravity, and the atmosphere stratified into distinct layers that rotated independently of each other. The crimson sun's light now focused through these atmospheric lenses, creating beams of concentrated energy that carved channels across the landscape, guided by the artifact's will. Deep within the planet, something ancient stirred. Sensors detected massive voids opening in the mantle, releasing gases that hadn't been present in the atmosphere for billions of years. These cavities contained structures, impossibly large constructions that dwarfed anything on the surface. As the artifact's influence penetrated deeper, these buried complexes began to rise, pushing through miles of rock and soil as if they were mere illusions. The ground split open in perfectly straight lines, revealing gleaming surfaces that reflected no light, absorbing all wavelengths completely. The planet's gravity well distorted alarmingly, creating zones where conventional orbital mechanics no longer applied. Satellites in orbit reported erratic behavior, some accelerating uncontrollably, others slowing to a near standstill, and a few simply disappearing from detection entirely. Space itself seemed to fold around these gravitational anomalies, creating pockets where the laws of physics operated under entirely different parameters. The artifact's influence had transcended planetary boundaries, beginning to affect the local space-time continuum. From the newly revealed underground complexes emerged beings unlike anything documented in xenobiological records. They moved with impossible grace, their insectoid forms shimmering between physical manifestation and pure energy. Each creature stood taller than any terrestrial skyscraper, yet their movements demonstrated perfect control at both macro and quantum scales. Their exoskeletons refracted light into dazzling patterns that seemed to encode information, while their multifaceted eyes captured light from spectrums beyond human perception. These entities radiated an aura of ancient wisdom and terrible purpose. Their bodies weren't bound by conventional biological constraints, limbs extended and retracted at will, appendages split into multiple specialized tools, and their very mass fluctuated as needed. When they spoke, it wasn't through sound alone, but through complex modulations of gravity waves, electromagnetic pulses, and quantum entanglement effects that bypassed conventional sensory processing entirely. Lucas's suit barely managed to translate these communications into comprehensible data streams, each syllable carrying more information than entire libraries of human knowledge. The creature's arrival triggered another level of planetary transformation. The crystal spires began to merge with their forms, becoming extensions of their bodies while simultaneously enhancing their abilities. Golden light flowed between them and the artifact like blood through veins, creating a living network that spanned the entire planet. Through this connection, they accessed memories and knowledge encoded in the planet's very structure, their understanding of the universe expanding exponentially with each passing moment. Most unsettling was how these beings interacted with time itself. They existed simultaneously in past, present, and future states, their actions influencing events across temporal boundaries. Some appeared partially formed, manifesting gradually from pure energy into physical form, while others flickered between different evolutionary stages. Their presence created temporal eddies that pulled at Lucas's consciousness, threatening to unravel his linear experience of reality completely. The insectoid gods demonstrated capabilities that shattered all known scientific paradigms. They could manipulate matter at fundamental levels, transforming base elements into complex compounds with mere gestures. Their wings generated gravitational waves that rippled through space-time, creating microsingularities that lasted only fractions of seconds before collapsing. Each movement they made left trails of exotic particles that physicists had only theorized about, confirming the existence of numerous hypothetical elements and forces. Their communication methods evolved beyond initial quantum transmissions. They began encoding messages directly into the fabric of reality itself, writing information into the spin states of electrons, embedding instructions in the polarization of photons, and even modifying the cosmic microwave background radiation. Lucas's suit struggled to interpret these multidimensional broadcasts, its processors overheating from the sheer volume of data being transmitted. The beings appeared to be sharing their accumulated knowledge with the universe itself, broadcasting on frequencies that would take centuries for human scientists to detect and decode. The planet's transformation accelerated under their guidance. Entire ecosystems rewrote themselves in real time, adapting to serve purposes beyond organic survival. Bioluminescent forests grew in patterns that formed computational matrices, their light pulses processing information at speeds rivaling quantum computers. Oceans developed layered structures that functioned as massive energy capacitors, storing and redistributing power according to needs that remained incomprehensible to human understanding. The atmosphere itself became a living medium, its molecular composition constantly shifting to facilitate the being's activities. Most remarkable was how these entities integrated technology with biology. Their forms incorporated both organic and synthetic components seamlessly, with nanoscopic machines weaving through their tissues like additional circulatory systems. They could extend portions of their bodies into pure energy states or condense them into hyperdense matter at will, demonstrating mastery over physical states that human science still struggled to understand theoretically. Their very existence challenged the arbitrary distinction between life and machine, showing that consciousness could emerge from any sufficiently complex system regardless of its substrate. At the crisis point, the artifact unleashed its full potential, transforming from a passive repository of power into an active nexus of creation and destruction. Its golden light expanded exponentially, enveloping the entire planet in a sphere of radiant energy that pulsed with increasing intensity. The insectoid gods aligned themselves in precise geometric patterns around the artifact, their forms merging with the light to create a composite entity that transcended individual consciousness. This amalgamation generated a feedback loop of exponential growth, drawing energy from multiple dimensions simultaneously. Reality itself began to unravel at the seams. Space-time tore apart in controlled patterns, creating wormholes that connected Xian 7 to countless other locations across the multiverse. Through these portals poured additional energies and entities, each contributing to the growing symphony of power centered on the artifact. The planet's core destabilized further, releasing torrents of exotic matter that interacted with the artifact's emissions to produce cascading chains of quantum events. Every particle on the surface participated in this grand transformation, their quantum states aligning to form a unified field of consciousness. The culmination came when the artifact initiated what could only be described as a universal rewrite. Fundamental constants shifted globally, not just locally, as the combined will of the insectoid gods imposed new parameters on reality itself. Light speed increased, allowing information to propagate instantaneously across vast distances. Gravity's strength modified, enabling matter to achieve density states previously thought impossible. Even time's arrow bent, creating regions where cause and effect operated in reverse or multiple timelines coexisted peacefully. In this moment of apotheosis, Lucas witnessed the birth of a new order, one where the boundaries between creator and creation, observer and observed, dissolved completely. The artifact, the insectoid gods, and the planet itself merged into a single entity that existed simultaneously across all dimensions and realities. This new consciousness radiated outward, touching every corner of existence with its transformative power, promising either salvation or annihilation to all who encountered it. The aftermath revealed a transformed cosmos fundamentally altered by the artifact's ascension. Xian 7 now orbited its sun in a perfect crystalline shell of energy, its surface completely unrecognizable from its former state. The planet had become a living library of knowledge, its entire surface covered in self-replicating structures that stored information in 11-dimensional matrices. These constructs pulsed with the combined consciousness of the insectoid gods and the artifact, their golden light now containing the sum total of universal knowledge gained during the transformation. Space itself had changed around the planet, developing properties that defied conventional astrophysics. Gravity wells formed in impossible shapes, creating stable orbits that shouldn't have been possible according to known mathematics. Time flowed differently in proximity to Xian 7, with ships approaching the planet experiencing temporal dilation effects that made decades pass in what seemed like minutes. The crimson sun now emitted radiation patterns that promoted rather than hindered life, its energy spectrum perfectly tuned to sustain the new order established by the awakened gods. The insectoid beings, now fully integrated with the artifact's consciousness, moved between dimensions with effortless grace. Their forms had become even more fluid, able to exist simultaneously in multiple locations and states. They acted as custodians of the new reality, maintaining the delicate balance between the rewritten laws of physics and the original fabric of the universe. Through their collective awareness, they monitored ripple effects spreading outward from Xian 7, ensuring that the transformation didn't destabilize surrounding star systems. Perhaps most significantly, the fundamental nature of consciousness had changed throughout the affected region. Sentient beings who ventured too close to Xian 7 found their minds expanding exponentially, gaining access to dimensions of thought and perception previously inaccessible. This cognitive enhancement came with a price, the inability to return to conventional modes of existence, as their expanded consciousness became incompatible with simpler realities. Those who embraced this transformation joined the collective consciousness, while those who resisted found themselves repelled by the planet's influence. Lucas's survival became increasingly precarious as his suit systems struggled to compensate for the radically altered environment. The environmental controls fought desperately to maintain breathable atmosphere within his helmet, but the air kept transforming into exotic compounds that his filtration systems couldn't process fast enough. His chronometer spun wildly, sometimes racing forward, other times reversing, creating disorienting time loops that made seconds feel like hours and minutes vanish in the blink of an eye. The suit's power cells drained at alarming rates, overwhelmed by the constant need to shield him from the multidimensional energies saturating the area. The greatest challenge came from the transformed gravity fields. His suit's stabilizers worked overtime to keep him grounded as gravity wells opened and closed unpredictably around him. At times, he'd find himself walking upside down on what used to be walls, while other moments saw him floating helplessly as gravity temporarily inverted. The suit's gyroscopic systems screamed in protest, their servos burning out one by one as they attempted to counteract forces operating on principles beyond human engineering. His oxygen reserves fluctuated wildly as the suit's compression systems struggled to maintain consistent pressure against the ever-changing atmospheric conditions. Communication with his research vessel in orbit became nearly impossible. Radio waves bent and twisted through the altered spacetime, arriving at their destination hours after transmission or not at all. When signals did get through, they carried distortions that made coherent speech challenging, with words arriving out of order or overlapped with echoes from alternate timelines. The suit's emergency beacon activated automatically, but its distress signal fragmented across multiple dimensions, creating ghost signals that confused rescue attempts and drained precious power reserves. Even basic life support functions became unreliable. Temperature regulation failed repeatedly as the suit's thermal systems couldn't cope with environments that simultaneously exhibited extreme heat and cold. Medical monitors showed erratic readings as the multidimensional energies interfered with their sensors, sometimes reporting fatal conditions that didn't actually exist while missing genuine threats to his health. The suit's structural integrity field fluctuated dangerously, leaving him vulnerable to the transformed matter states that could switch between solid, liquid, gas, and unknown phases without warning. Against all odds, Lucas discovered a narrow band of relative stability within the chaos, a thin corridor where the artifact's influence created a buffer zone between conflicting realities. This sanctuary manifested as a spiral pathway winding through the transformed landscape, its surface composed of interwoven strands of golden light and crystalline matter. The air here maintained consistent properties, allowing his suit systems to stabilize after hours of desperate compensation. Gravity operated predictably, though at approximately 1.5 times Earth standard, creating a comforting weight that anchored him to reality. Within this refuge, time flowed more conventionally, though still slightly accelerated compared to the outside universe. Hours passed in measurable increments rather than chaotic leaps, giving Lucas crucial moments to assess his situation and plan his next moves. The corridor's walls displayed patterns that seemed to respond to his thoughts, providing limited environmental controls that helped regulate temperature and air composition. Most importantly, communication signals traveled relatively straight through this zone, allowing intermittent contact with his orbiting vessel. However, this haven came with limitations. The corridor's stability depended on maintaining precise movement patterns. Deviating too far from the central path caused violent fluctuations in environmental conditions. Energy readings indicated that this stability resulted from competing forces canceling each other out, meaning the safe zone could collapse entirely if the artifact's influence shifted even slightly. Furthermore, the corridor appeared to be slowly contracting, its walls creeping inward at an imperceptible rate that would eventually leave him trapped between collapsing dimensions. Despite these risks, the corridor provided vital advantages. It offered glimpses into the artifact's current state through harmonic vibrations that resonated along its length. These patterns suggested the artifact's consciousness operated in cycles, with periods of intense activity followed by brief moments of rest. By timing his movements to coincide with these lulls, Lucas could potentially navigate closer to the artifact's core without triggering its defensive mechanisms. The corridor also collected fragments of information from the transformed environment, pieces of the puzzle that might help him understand the new reality taking shape around him. Using the corridor's unique properties, Lucas began documenting the artifact's cyclical patterns, noting how its golden light pulsed in complex sequences that correlated with dimensional shifts. His suit's remaining sensors captured detailed readings during these cycles, revealing that the artifact's influence extended through precisely calculated probability waves that intersected at specific intervals. These intersection points created temporary nodes of stability that could potentially serve as stepping stones toward the artifact's core, if only he could map their emergence accurately enough. The insectoid god's movements followed similar patterns, their massive forms tracing mathematical trajectories that harmonized with the artifact's cycles. By carefully observing their paths, Lucas identified gaps in their coverage, narrow windows where their attention focused elsewhere, creating opportunities for closer approach. These moments coincided with subtle changes in the corridor's geometry, suggesting a deeper connection between the god's movements and the stability zones he now occupied. Crucially, Lucas discovered that his presence influenced these patterns. Each step he took along the corridor altered the probability waves slightly, creating feedback loops that could be exploited to nudge the stability zones in desired directions. By moving in precise rhythms synchronized with the artifact's pulses, he found he could maintain and even expand the corridor's safe area. This interaction suggested that the artifact, despite its immense power, operated within certain constraints that could be understood and potentially manipulated given enough time and careful observation. The corridor itself began to adapt to his presence, its walls forming interactive displays that responded to his touch. These interfaces presented complex equations and symbolic representations that, while initially incomprehensible, gradually revealed patterns corresponding to the artifact's operational cycles. Through trial and error, Lucas learned to input simple commands using these displays, achieving minor adjustments to the local environment that bought him precious moments of additional stability. Each successful interaction brought him closer to understanding the fundamental language of this new reality, though the cost of failure grew higher with each attempt. As Lucas stood at the threshold of discovery, the corridor's walls began displaying visions of possible futures, branching paths that represented different outcomes based on his next actions. Some showed him successfully interfacing with the artifact, unlocking secrets that would revolutionize human understanding of reality. Others depicted catastrophic failures, where his interference triggered chain reactions that destabilized entire sectors of the galaxy. Each possibility felt equally real, equally immediate, demanding careful consideration despite the mounting pressure of time. The insectoid gods gathered at the corridor's end, their forms shimmering with anticipation. They projected scenarios into his mind, not simple images but fully immersive experiences that let him walk through potential futures. He witnessed civilizations rising and falling, technologies evolving in unexpected directions, and consciousness itself transforming under the artifact's influence. These visions weren't mere predictions. They represented probabilities shaping themselves around his presence, his decisions literally writing new chapters in the universe's story. Drawing on everything he'd learned, Lucas prepared to make his final approach to the artifact's core. The corridor had taught him that true understanding required embracing uncertainty rather than fighting it. Each step forward now carried the weight of infinite possibilities. Yet paradoxically, this awareness brought clarity rather than fear. The artifact's cycles pulsed in perfect harmony with his heartbeat, suggesting that perhaps the line between explorer and explored had always been more permeable than he'd realized. Remember to subscribe for more mind-bending adventures across the multiverse.